Dr. Ben Song risked everything when he used the Quantum Leap Accelerator to travel back in time. Now our team's working to find out why. As he leaps between bodies with no memory of who he is, he still has one hope. That his next leap takes him back to the place.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Corman Productions with my co-host Stacie, here to talk about the 8th episode of the Quantum Leap revival, Stand By Ben. The episode was directed by Abi Yabian. I'm sure I totally mispronounced that name. I'm sorry. The episode was written by Emily Kim. Before going any further, I will tell you a couple of things. This is not a spoiler-free podcast, so if you haven't watched the episode, I highly recommend you go and check it out and then come back and give us a listen. Secondly, if you are listening to one of the platforms that this podcast is now listenable, please subscribe. You can also head over to my YouTube channel, Corman Productions, where this podcast can be watched as well as additional content can be discovered, both Quantum Leap related and otherwise. If you are already on my YouTube channel and like this podcast, please like, share, and comment, as well as subscribing to my channel. This week's shout out goes to Dean Stockwell, who had his 1-year anniversary of passing away. Dean Stockwell, you are still missed by many fans. And yes, yesterday was the 1-year anniversary of Dean Stockwell's death. Stacie, your thoughts on this week's episode?
Hey, Dave. So, I do have some mixed feelings about this episode. I liked it at its surface, but we were talking about this earlier. It seemed like there were a lot of kind of weak moments in this, a lot of missed opportunities. The whole thing just seemed a little easy and fluffy, and I kind of walked away like it was a feel-good episode, and it wasn't meant to be.
Yeah, I have some problems with this episode. Overall, I feel like it was okay, but there was a lot of story here, a lot of story, that never really got a chance to develop.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like this would have been better off as a 2-hour movie as opposed to a 40-minute show. So, all in all, I kind of feel like the episode didn't really work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so anyway, Ben ends up leaping in. We saw this escape last week from the Syria Youth Academy, which I don't think we got the name of that last week, in 1996 in a stolen Jeep, courtesy of the person that Ben leaped into, who also happens to be Ben. The kids are around 16, which makes them a year younger than what these kids were.
Yeah, I did note that, they're pretty close to our age.
Mm.
And maybe that's why, it felt like this feel-good episode to me, because, the setting is really, right when we would have been around this age at that time, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And the same can be said for Ben. He's the same age as these kids.
Yes. Though not really, which is kind of weird. It plays into the weird dynamic of the episode. The kids are Stacie, Roy, Leah, and Ben, of course. He's leaped into a 16-year-old kid by the same name. Roy is played by Anthony Turple, who actually appeared on This Is Us in the 5th season episode Brotherly Love as a stage manager. I don't really recognize him from that episode, but I did happen to notice that when I was looking at his Internet Movie Database page. They talk about where they are all going. Roy is heading to Alaska.
Mm-hmm.
Leah just wants to go home. But
she can't.
Yes, according to Stacie, who you have a namesake of. It's a person named after you in this episode.
That doesn't happen too often. I'm sure you experience that a lot more often than I do.
Yeah, Dave is a pretty common name. There's actually a movie named after me. They can't go home because, according to Stacie, they are all there because they are broken. And it's hinted at the scene that Roy has a drug problem. They don't really go anywhere with that in this episode. They do resolve it really easily. They are all bonding. When something happens to the car, it's not really specified what, but we hear this funny sound. The car flips over into the woods and credits. When we come back, the kids are all miraculously alive, and their injuries are superficial. Nobody has any broken bones or is dead. Everybody seems to still be breathing, so that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Stacie tries to beat the hell out of the car, so it's clearly hinted at that she has some anger management issues. Addison appears, and Ben walks like maybe a foot away to talk to her. It's like if I were to walk away from you to the staircase over there to talk to my imaginary friend and expecting you not to hear me.
Right. He doesn't seem too concerned about... Well, throughout the episode, he doesn't seem too concerned about what these kids think. But yeah, so we gotta remember, this is the first time Ben and Addison have connected since the beginning of the last episode.
Right, because basically Ben and Addison lost contact almost immediately within that episode, before the credits even
And
started.
I found it interesting that here, now what they do next is they actually show us a bunch of scenes from the last episode. And I kind of feel I'm happy they did that, because remember, this series is not episodic like the original. And that makes it hard. It's harder to rewatch, right? I mean, this is the case of all modern television. You have to watch the episodes in order. Now, the original Quantum Leap, as well as most shows of that era, you could watch any episode at any time and you're fine. You can jump right in. And the way this series is like telling this story from one episode to the other, I feel like this was a good placement for them to be like, here's what we're talking about right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because it makes it easier to just watch this episode randomly later.
Yeah, I kind of feel like this episode would have been stronger if it had been completely standalone. Like, where they had given it more room to breathe. I think maybe this should not have been the fall finale, which I forgot to mention, by the way. This is the fall finale. We won't be back until January 2nd, according to Internet Movie Database. And I feel like they should have maybe taken this story and put it somewhere else.
Yeah, it did not feel like a mid-season finale. It felt like, I definitely get what you're seeing, that, to really tell the story they were trying to tell, they needed to go deeper into the story and give us more content with these kids. And yeah, at the same time, it just didn't feel like the end of, the end of a half a season. And they didn't call it a mid-season finale. They just said, oh, we'll be back in January.
Right. They were only really calling it the fall finale in marketing. I doubt that this episode was actually intended to be the fall finale.
Yeah, I feel like this is just the last episode they had ready to go, so they cut it here. I was kind of surprised, actually, with an 18-episode season count that, they didn't do 9 and 9.
Right. Probably because originally it wasn't a 18-episode season. It was just going to be 12.
Right. So this would have been 2/3 of the way through at this point. And I don't know. I feel like they didn't really know, with that uncertainty of how many episodes total they were going to have. I know they wanted to tell their season story regardless of how many episodes they got. So I do expect there to be some kind of filler episodes in the back half. But yeah, I don't feel like this was really planned to be like this finale type of episode.
Ben in this scene reveals that Janice's involvement, but Ben still doesn't remember her, though he is starting to get flashbacks. And Addison ends up saying that she needs to talk to the team. Ben ends up telling her that in the last leap he saw a demon, because Addison wasn't really clued into what happened there. And that's not exactly accurate to what actually was going on.
Yeah, did he not realize that it was Janice that he saw? Or did he not realize that he was hallucinating?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he did. I'm pretty sure he got clued into that, so I'm not sure why he would specifically say that he saw a demon when he knows he didn't. But he says he did okay in that leap, and that Ben doesn't need Addison anymore. And Ben claims differently, although all evidence to the contrary, because I really didn't think that Ben does need Addison.
Addison, and we've said this before, she's not that great at this job.
Yeah, see, that's another problem I have with this episode. This was a good opportunity to have her be useful and do something. This is a survival type story, or at least it was marketed as such.
Right.
That doesn't get as much focus as it should. This should be Addison's moment, because she was in the military. She knows survival techniques. Mm-hmm. There's only one moment in this episode.
They touch on it, but at the same time, that's what they did with most of the topics in this episode. They kind of brushed through everything very quickly without going into any details. So
it kind of reminds me a lot of the pilot episode, to be honest. It's just the way it's paced, and it's overstuffed, and so on and so forth. Okay, so Addison ends up giving the date for this episode.
Yeah, which I like that. I'm happy we got that format. Thank you. They told us it is July 10th, 1996.
The history says that Ben and the other students got lost on a hike and died of heat exposure, which seems to be a lie. Addison departs and is interrupted by Leah asking about his imaginary friend, which Leah had as a kid as well, which a therapist described as a coping mechanism, which she thought, no duh, of course it was a coping mechanism. Leah wants to know if he's ever had a real girlfriend. Of course, Ben doesn't know if the person he's leaked into has had a girlfriend.
And this is because he tells Leah that who he was talking to was his...
Oh, yeah.
Well, he said, I'm talking to my fiance, and then he goes, wait, I'm 16. My girlfriend. I'm talking to my girlfriend.
I mean, and he can still call her
And
fiance.
then she jumps, to, oh, it's your imaginary girlfriend. And he goes with that.
Right. So Ben ends up saying yes, that he has had a girlfriend because he has. He doesn't know if his host has had it or not. And Leah says that she has had one as well, which is an early hint at her sexuality.
Yes, which we find out is, probably a big reason why she's having, she had this kind of break with her family.
Later, it'll be stated that the reason she was sent to the school was because she was cutting.
Yes.
But, yeah, like you just said, I don't think that was the real reason.
No, they told us during her, when we're getting, Addison gives Ben information on all of these kids, which I'm sure is what you're getting at next. But we found out she had a very religious family. So, no, they're not going to be okay with that. So that's part of the reason that she was sent here. And, this is where we learn, this isn't just a school, right?
Right.
This is
It's more like a prison, the way they present it.
It's a school for troubled teens. It's a place where parents send the kids they don't want to deal with. These are all discarded youths who are now put into a system that's really crappy, which, we'll get to that. But
okay, so Leah ends up telling Ben that Stacie has a plan. We cut back to the project. Actually, I think this is the first time that we've seen the project at this point. Magic is surprised that Janice cut the connection to Ben. The project's connection to Ben. He gets the rundown of everything that we know so far. And if this wasn't the fall finale, I would suggest cutting these scenes altogether in favor of expanding the Leap story.
Right. It's another example of how the two different stories just don't mesh great together. They both seem like, good, important things to do, but to fit them together, it does feel a little awkward here.
The kids in the past go through their backpacks to figure out what they have for possible survival. And okay, so we didn't bring this up yet. They are 5 miles from the destination that they will eventually go. From the cabin. Yeah. Which, okay, that's, we're in the woods. It's tough terrain, as you pointed out to me. But still, 5 miles? I mean, I think that I could do 5 miles pretty easily. And I'm like twice these kids' age at this point.
Yeah, as far as the whole survivalism story, it doesn't feel like we're off to a great start here. And remember, their plan was they were going to drive somewhere.
Right.
So why do you have survival stuff with you anyway?
Well, I mean, when it comes down to it, they really didn't. They had a couple of bottles of water and some stolen trophies and a hat and some playing cards.
I forget which girl it was. One of the girls had the map and these things with her. And she said, oh, well, if the car didn't work, we could have just walked. So if you were already had a contingency to walk, why is this such a big deal right now?
Right. They want to stay away from the road because they don't want to get caught by the people searching for them. But, again, if you could walk there, then this really shouldn't be that big of a deal. Addison ends up saying, coming back to the scene, to say that the school had covered things up. That it wasn't actually a hiking trip.
Right, which we know because the kids just stole a vehicle and left. Yeah, we found out that the director of the school, Adam Sullivan, had a couple months later, I think they said, submitted an insurance report for the vehicle. So we do know that lines up. The vehicle was stolen. And they said the kids died of heat exhaustion during a hike. Well, it's kind of insinuated here that they died during their trip because they never made it back to civilization.
Yes, in the original timeline, Addison says the kids went south and they split up for some reason and then died.
Yeah.
These kids' survival skills are not very good, apparently. I have no survival skills whatsoever. And as I pointed, I'm pretty sure that by accident, I would find some way to live in this situation. I mean, it's not like we're out in the middle of the desert somewhere. There's millions of ways that they could have, like, ended up surviving in this scenario. And apparently they're all really bad at survival and they just walk off and die.
Yeah, they just sat down in the woods and waited for death to come. I don't know. Like, and that's another thing. Like, we didn't really get that explanation, right? Of why did these kids die? How did they die exactly? Because what they end up facing within the episode, it just seems too easy. It just all seems way too easy.
So Ben ends up trying to get the kids' attention, but none of them are listening because they're teenagers, until Ben yells at them. He tries to convince them to go back to the road. Nobody agrees with him. Stacie has a map that leads to a cabin. Well, it doesn't actually lead to a cabin because a cabin is... What's the term for it?
Off the grid.
Off the grid.
Yes. So, but she knows, like, there's a cabin, like, 5 miles from here. We're just going to head there and we'll sleep there for tonight. And then in the morning, we'll continue on to, I forget where they were headed. But, you know, wherever they were going to catch public transportation to go on to their destinations. And,
Addison tells him to put a stop to this. And Ben tries to do so, going as far as to say that they're all going to die if they go on this path.
Yeah, that's where my brain was. So, in the trailer last week, right? I criticized that Ben was acting like, oh my God, it's futile. We have no food, no water. We're going to die. And here we see that really didn't happen during the adventure. That happened right here at the beginning. He's trying to convince them not to even start the hike, right?
Right. So it's not quite Ben panicking. It's that him trying to convince the kids badly, I would say, not to do this in the first place. Because
he knows that is what's going to happen. You're going to die if you do this. But to them, it's like, what's your problem? We're just going for a walk in the woods. But it does seem logical, right? If you're here to keep these kids from dying, and if they go in those woods, they're going to die, and here they are, like, 2 minutes from the road, convincing them to go back seems like the right choice at this moment.
Right. I don't have fault with Ben's strategy here, but of course it wasn't going to work because we're dealing with a bunch of teenagers.
Now, one thing he could have done, which, you know, we learn, obviously, throughout the episode, that this isn't just about keeping the kids from dying in the woods, but he doesn't know that yet. So would it not have made sense for him to just go back on his own?
But then
all the other tell the people, hey, they're out there. Let's go get them before they die. I mean...
Yeah, at this point, he doesn't know how terrible this school is.
Right.
So, and obviously Addison isn't going to tell him. So, yeah, I guess that would be a good strategy from Ben's point of view.
Like, if they're refusing to walk back, maybe you just walk back yourself and get some freaking help.
Right.
Since you think these kids are about to walk to their death.
And maybe at that point, do this, what they're attempting to do here, in a different way. They say they would rather die than go back to the school.
Yeah, which is when he realizes, wait, something is up here. Who says they'd rather die, literally die, than go to school?
I mean, there's plenty of kids that have said that, but I think for the most part, they're exaggerating. These kids actually believe it.
Yeah.
They decide to go on without him, so Ben asks Addison to make sure that they don't get lost, and he will keep them alive. Now, honestly, at that point, if you have Addison guiding them 5 miles... At that point, the leap should be over. Their survival should not be that big of a deal at that point.
Yeah. But also, remember, at this point, the cabin's 5 miles. We don't know how far it is from the cabin to, like, whatever town they're trying to get to. And the cabin was just meant to be their waypoint. Addison's pretty convinced the cabin doesn't exist.
Right.
She says, I've looked. There is no cabin. This cabin is lore. And the only reason the kids heard about it is because they said some other kids that escaped the school went there. But in what I pointed out to you earlier, if they know that these kids went to this cabin, that means the kids were caught and brought back to the school. Because otherwise they wouldn't have heard from them to know about the cabin.
Right. Well, kids are basically not known for their long-range thinking. So this is typical 16-year-old thinking. Not thinking, hey, if you go to that cabin where kids were already caught, that might be the first place. that these people that are looking for you are going to go.
Right. Which I have issue with that too. I mean, we'll get to that, once the kids actually, spoiler alert, get to the cabin.
Oh yeah, spoiler alert, they don't die and they actually do get to the cabin.
If the guys from the school, right, they're driving, why have they not caught up to the kids yet?
Yeah, you would figure they would be there at the cabin before the kids.
They should be like 2 minutes behind the kids. They saw them leave.
Right.
Where are they? It takes them like 24 hours to catch up with these kids over a course of 5 miles.
And I'm pretty sure that I can get in 5 miles somewhere a lot quicker than a day.
Yeah.
I could probably do that in like a couple of hours. And like I said, I'm no spring chicken. I'm pretty old at this point compared to these kids.
I mean, given the fact that we have Addison guiding them so they don't get lost.
I mean, if I had an Addison guiding me, well, I'm not sure she would do me any good because she's pretty much painted herself as useless, but still. I think she can handle directing me. Yeah,
she's taking the place of Google Maps here.
Yes. That's actually a good idea. We should have that in the future. Instead of Google Maps, we should have, like, Addison Maps.
Well, for years, I've wanted to, do Hey Ziggy instead of Hey Google.
I think there is something like that. I think we've talked about that before, like where they can have Alexa talk in the voice of Ziggy.
Alexa can go by Ziggy, yes. It's one of the programmed names you can give Alexa.
Okay, so back at the project, Jen is tracking Janice looking for power surges. Jen is ignoring phone calls from what turns out to be her dad. And judging from the map that we were looking at, they locate Janice in Los Angeles, which would seem to indicate that the project is somewhere in California.
Yeah, which is what I thought when we were looking at the beach we were at before.
I don't know that we ever officially had that confirmed.
They've never specifically said where they are. They're definitely at a beach because they show that pier. And to me, it looks like Santa Monica Pier. But they've never actually said, All we really know is they're on a coast. But yeah, definitely pretty sure we can safely say we're somewhere in Southern California.
Jen and Magic decide to go after Janice, as they typically do. And Jen and Magic end up talking about her dad, which is when the elevator shuts off. The office is now on lockdown, like they're under attack. And this is all because of Janice.
Right. So what we didn't mention is in that last scene when they were, they found out what's going on with Janice, they addressed the fact that they're going to stop her from taking over the imaging chamber again. And it was as simple as Ian was like, oh, I updated the operating system in the imaging chamber, so she can't get in anymore.
Ian must have gone to the Staples store and bought one of those "that was easy" buttons.
Right?
That was way
it was
too
like
easy.
1 second of dialogue, like, oh, we fixed that problem. We don't have to worry about that again. So now that Janice is locked out of the imaging chamber program, she's gone ahead and locked everybody down. We found out that she can see what's happening through their security cameras. She's, she's still in Ziggy, so she can see the security cameras. And basically, we know at this point that she locked them down because they're about to catch her, right? So this is giving her time to do what she needs to do to keep them from catching her.
And by the way, this story with Jen's dad, I feel like that could have been good if it were put somewhere else.
Right.
In a different episode that wasn't this one.
They're sprinkling all of this information about our main cast and their backstories. They're sprinkling it in very slowly and it seems kind of odd. Like, for us, we're looking for all these details. I'm writing down all these things like, oh, we just learned, for example, Magic's a father. He mentioned, about his kids. And I was like, I don't know if we knew that before. But I don't know. Like, we got this development the last couple weeks about Addison's parents. And now we're talking about Jen's father. And it kind of feels a little soap opera-y, the way they're sprinkling all these details in at what seems like very random times.
And we did get the insinuation that Jen kind of sees Magic as a father figure, which I think we kind of guessed before.
We know Jen and Magic are very close. Jen, for example, knew about Magic's history with Sam, which Ian didn't know. So Jen's in the know. Jen and Magic are very close. And we're still kind of wondering, like, what is it about Jen that, why is magic so close to Jen? He's the one who got her out of prison and pulled her into the project. Is there some reason here? Like, is it just because she's a genius in cybersecurity, or is there more personal reasons going on here? It's indicated here that Magic knows Jen's father, right? Because he's calling Magic since he can't get a hold of Jen. I don't think that your estranged father would randomly call your secret boss.
Right.
So he must know him.
Yeah, so there's probably a connection there that hopefully we're going to get at some point. And hopefully soon, because I just feel like a lot of these threads are dangling and not really going anywhere.
Right.
And that's kind of my concern as far as the project side of things are concerned.
Right. It feels like we're getting all this information, but do we need all of this information? It needs to mean something. If we're going to spend all of this time having these conversations about these characters' backstories, it's got to come up in the bigger picture. Right.
In the past, Addison ends up giving a rundown of the kids. Roy had a high IQ and flunked out of every school he ever had. And he had a couple of drug overdoses, one of which they thought was intentional. So they imply that he might have tried to commit suicide.
Mm-hmm.
Stacie was good till her mother died, and then she was sent to Sierra after setting fire to her house.
Yeah. So her mom died in a car accident, I think they said. Dad's an alcoholic. She tried burning down her house, and now she's at this school. So yeah, these kids have a lot of issues, right? They've had a lot of things they faced already in their lives. And, we also get the insinuation that, their parents are all kind of rich because they can afford to send them to this school. And, they're all seen as just problems to their families. The families just want to not deal with them at all.
Leah came from a very religious family. I think we mentioned that already.
I mentioned that, yeah.
She was diagnosed with anxiety, depression, ADHD, but otherwise was a really good student.
She was a really good student, and their way of dealing with her and probably dealing with the fact that of her sexuality is probably what launched all of this. They sent her to see all these psychiatrists.
They never specifically say that it had anything to do with her.
No, but I think we can safely assume that that's what led them to saying, "Oh, you need to see a therapist." And they diagnosed her with everything in the book, which I bet she wasn't even dealing with half of the things they said she was dealing with.
Well, I've made the argument in the past that they are way too quick to diagnose ADHD.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That it's overdiagnosed, and they tend to medicate. They're way too quick to medicate for that issue. So that wouldn't surprise me at all if she didn't have ADHD.
Yeah. I mean, she has depression and anxiety. She's dealing with a crazy family.
Right.
And I can say that because anyone who sent their kids to this school is a crazy family.
Yeah, they would have to be. That's for sure.
And so she was facing a lot, and I feel like she must have just not been able to be herself, right? Her family had an issue with her. We know that the sexuality was an issue. We know her family was very religious. And for them to send her away, like you just know, like she had a lot going on, right? All of these kids did. But still, she just wants to go home. That's all she wants. She doesn't even care that her parents cast her away. She said, "Where do I want to go? I want to go home."
Right, and I kind of feel like they should have focused more on this.
Yeah, that's what, there's these big stories here. They're giving us these sprinkles that, like, there's so much going on in these kids' lives, and we just don't get to explore any of that.
The writers need to pick a lane here. Do you want to tell a survival tale? Do you want to tell a story of these kids bonding? Pick a lane.
Yeah.
And go with that. They were trying to tell all these stories, and really none of it ends up satisfying.
Right.
Roy ends up turning around and asking if his imaginary girlfriend is hot. And one of the funny things about this episode is just how, as you mentioned, how accepting they are of Addison's presence.
Yeah,
here.
Addison really became a part of this group. Not only did Addison literally stay with them through almost the entire time. She only left once or twice for brief periods. But the group all knows about her, right? And they know about her as Ben, teenage Ben's imaginary girlfriend. but they all like accept her throughout the entire thing. They're like talking about her like she's there, like she's
Right.
real.
And she, of course, is real. But,
Right, but they don't know that. They're just like, sure, you got an imaginary girlfriend, awesome. What's she like?
Yeah, Ben ends up suggesting that they stop and take a rest. Stacie doesn't want to, because, it's only like 5 miles away. They all end up fighting, and Roy ends up pushing Ben down for suggesting that they go back to the road. At night, the group encounters wolves. Leah comes up with the idea to growl back at them and act scary. And much to my surprise, this actually works. I'm not sure you should try this at home, kids. I wouldn't recommend going up to a wolf and starting to growl and make yourself scary. I don't think it'll work that well. But this is another missed opportunity for Addison.
Yes.
This is another opportunity to make her useful. They could have had, like last week we were talking about this, I think. I'm pretty sure we were talking about this in the podcast. How we haven't really dealt with the fact that in the original Quantum Leap series, kids, mentally ill people, and animals could see Al. This was an opportunity to show that rule still applied to Addison.
Right.
And they could have made use of that in a way that she could have scared off the wolves.
Right.
But that's not how this plays out.
Wolves here, yeah. Now, if those rules apply, which they should, why would you get, it seems silly to go out of your way to change that mechanic.
Right.
They should be responding to Addison. And even if she's not going to interact and help the situation, it still would have been a great opportunity to acknowledge that wolf's looking at me. It can see me.
Right. And all Addison does in this scene is stand there and look scared.
Yeah.
Like she's afraid she's going to be attacked by wolves.
She agrees.
You're a hologram, Addison!
She agrees with Leah by saying, well, yeah, if you show fear, they're going to know, right? So you shouldn't show fear.
That is one instance where they sort of kind of dealt with the whole Addison having survival instincts and knowledge based on her time in the military. That's a sort of nod to that, but not.
Yeah,
not
she
really.
didn't take any control of the situation. She didn't really provide help at all, whether it be advice or physically scaring the wolves away, which she could have. She could have went right up in their faces. If you're deciding the way to do this is to scare them, you could have got pretty close to them without, being in any danger.
Right. And you were the one that easily could have done that as opposed to anybody else without being, as you said, in danger. Late at night, Ben and Roy talk. Roy can't sleep because of his painkillers. He talks about his dad, who it's implied was abusive.
Yes.
Addison is here to tell Ben that the kids who are in Ben's situation just want somebody who's going to listen to them and care. And suggests that you should talk to the kids as you would anybody else.
Yeah.
But one, I don't think Addison is needed for that. I think Ben could have handled that on his own.
Right. That wasn't really great insight to talk to the kids.
Right. Like, we've seen Ben be plenty of empathetic and be able to handle these situations himself without Addison being there to be like, okay, Ben, now talk to him like this. So I just kind of felt like Addison's input there was not needed.
Mm-hmm.
We learned about the box at Sierra, which is kind of like prison where you put yourself in the dark hole room. What do they call that?
Solitary?
Solitary confinement.
And we got to see the box. And it's I feel like it's kind of weird how they show us these scenes of the box because Ben hasn't seen the box, so he's not having a memory of it. It's almost like we're seeing the other kids' memories or thoughts, which seems a little odd, the way they presented that to me.
It's not, the series is not usually shown from the other person's perspective.
Right.
It's usually shown from Ben's perspective. So, I agree that's a little bit odd.
Also, I got to say here, I watch the show From on Epix, and talking about the box just brought me there. They have a box in that show, which is literally where you go to your death. So it reminded me very much of that.
I don't know, the way they paint the school wouldn't surprise me at all if that was the way they were going.
Yeah.
So Addison suggests that there's more going on here than just saving these kids' lives.
Yeah, this is when they're really like, well, what's the deal with this school?
Right.
Yeah.
Where we start to get hints that this is not a very good place to go.
Yeah.
Okay, so back at the project. The project is in lockdown. Jen talks about her father, who's trying to reach out. Every few years he reaches out, and every few years she's disappointed. Like I said, this should have been somewhere else. It should not have been in this episode, but that's the deal with her. In the past, we discover that they are out of water, and Ziggy thinks the odds suck. Well, that's very helpful of Ziggy, by the way. No matter what Ben does, the odds suck. Yeah. You don't want to give a number on that? Like, is there like a 100%?
I mean,
chance they're going to die? Or
in this show, Ziggy always has a 100% chance.
Ben is determined to help them escape, but Leah steps into a snake hole and breaks her ankle. Yeah. Now, at first, I thought she got bit by a snake, and that's what we were going with, and Ben was going to have to suck out the poison or something like that.
Well, I got to point out, right before she actually breaks her ankle, she wasn't doing so well, right?
They're all not doing very well.
She was kind of wobbly. They said she's having issues. They'd already, she drank the last of the water. And I don't know if you caught it. Leah stumbles. Addison tries to catch her. Oh. Addison reaches out like she's going to grab her. Like, Addison, have you not figured this out yet? You cannot catch her.
Well, you can't blame a hologram for trying.
And I just thought it was kind of a humorous moment. And then it was like a minute later, she breaks her ankle. So it was evident that she was, not doing so great. So it made sense that she was going to end up falling and hurting herself.
There's 2 points about this scene. One, they have not been walking for that long. They can't possibly have been.
Right, it's the next day now. They just rested all night.
They all act like they are about to die. Like they've been walking in the desert for days.
Yeah. No, I get it. They're out of water and they're hot. I get it. But yeah, it hasn't been that long. You can go 2 days without water.
Right. And
it's been like 12 hours, including the time that they slept.
Right. The other point about this is that Stacie ends up acting like Ben is some kind of leader, which granted he's been acting like in this episode, but what we learned about the person that he leaped into is that he was an introvert with Asperger's syndrome. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily the type of guy that you would think would be able to lead a group of people in a survival in a moment of where you're trying to survive. Right.
Yeah, the host, Ben, definitely wasn't cut out for the role that our Ben is taking on in this adventure.
And as we talked about offline, not on the air, we talked about how well do these kids know each other? Because you would figure they would think that this guy with Asperger's syndrome would be acting way differently than he currently is.
They said that Ben had only been at the school a couple weeks, so they probably don't know him very well. And if the school is really this, terrible the way they present it, I imagine they don't really give the kids a lot of chance for social interactions. I don't think they have a lot of freedoms in this school. So that brings up the question, how did Ben, host teenage Ben, end up part of this escape plan in the first place?
Right. That is something that we were talking about. And yeah, I'm not sure how any of these kids even met enough to pull this off in the first place.
One thing is, they do have the nickname of him as Klepto.
Right.
Teen Ben likes to steal things. So maybe they knew that about him, and they were like, hey, we need someone to steal the car keys. He's our guy. So I guess that could have been the reason he got brought in, was because he had the balls to steal the car. I don't know.
That's probably the reason, but we don't really get any background into that, which is one of the reasons why I think they really should have focused more on this story rather than some of these other things going on.
Right. It felt like there was stuff missing.
All right. So Leah breaks her ankle, and Addison, showing her survival abilities and having her time in the military come into play, is able to tell Ben how to make a splint, which they do really, really quick.
Really quick.
They resolve this problem within 2 seconds, it seems.
Yep, and she surprisingly gets around really well on this splint, which they made from 2 sticks, a couple of t-shirts, and 2 belts.
How very resourceful of them. This is the only time in the episode that I found Addison even remotely useful or helpful.
But do you think that would have been good enough? To get up and continue your hike?
No, I don't.
I've never broken my ankle. I have twisted my ankle.
I've sprained my ankle 5 times.
It's bad. It hurts.
Yes.
And I imagine a break hurts much worse than
Yes.
that.
I imagine a break would be a lot
I
more
can't
painful.
imagine just wrapping a t-shirt and a stick around you and
You're good to
good
go.
to go. Yeah.
Oh, but Leah gets up and is able to walk so that they can go to the creek so they can get some water.
Which they were still 2 miles away from at this point. So she walked 2 miles with this splint on.
When they're pretty close to death, during the other 3 miles that they were walking.
Oh, and also it was in that moment that Roy decided to give Leah his pills that he had.
Because he doesn't need them
He doesn't need
anymore.
them anymore. He's a drug addict. He's got these pain pills. He gives them to Leah to help with the pain of her ankle. So maybe that's partially why she's able to walk.
I mean, that is as good an explanation
Yeah.
as any. But, so
But
Roy...
it's very convenient, right?
Yeah. Roy, after one scene talking to Ben, his drug addiction is cured, so he's all good now. I'm glad that was so easily resolved, just like everything else in this episode. We had some scenes at the project that should have been cut, like for time, so we could put it somewhere else. In the past, Leah talks about her parents and her sexuality. Ben suggests she give her parents the kindness that they couldn't give her. And Stacie ends up asking, well, how does that help? It'll help Leah. Okay, but how? Exactly. What is this solving exactly? I don't know. I mean, I guess suppose it's decent advice, but still. Roy tells her that they don't think she's weird because she's not weird, unlike what her parents think of her. And this is a bonding scene in this episode that just happens after, almost no interaction between any of them at this point.
Right. And again, that's where we're missing, they named this episode after Stand By Me, which, I talked about this last week, how traditionally Quantum Leap does name their episodes after other media, and it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with those things that they're naming it after. So I'm not expecting this story to follow the story of Stand By Me.
But at the same time, it kind of treads
it's a good
similar ground.
comparison,
Yeah.
right? That it's about a group of teenagers going on a big life-changing adventure and having these bonds happen. And we're told those bonds are happening here, but we're not seeing it. It's not
It's a classic
comparable
case.
as far as what they're actually doing.
It's a classic case of telling and not showing,
Yes.
which is a cardinal sin of visual media. And the difference between Stand By Me and this episode is that Stand By Me was a feature-length movie, so
Right.
you had the time to tell the story,
Right.
as opposed to the 40-something minutes.
And it feels like they're trying to be like, yeah, that's what happened. That's what happened here. They faced survival, and now they're best friends.
Forever and ever and ever. They get to the creek, which is all dried up. Welp, they're dead. Ben starts freaking out, saying, no, this cannot be how this leap is going. And then he notices that...
He totally loses it. And
Right.
he doesn't care about what these kids think of him. He drops character, right?
Right.
He stops being Benjamin Winters, and he's Ben Song. He says, this can't be the leap. He starts talking about Ziggy. And they're like, who the fuck is Ziggy? Probably should cut that.
Nah, it'll be good. It'll be good. We'll keep that in. I think we can get away with one swear word per episode. Isn't that the ratings?
It's your YouTube channel. So.
Basically, YouTube, as I understand it, cares about the first 30 seconds. As long as you don't swear during that, you're good.
Okay.
All right. So anyway, Ben ends up. He's freaking out. He's talking about Ziggy, as you were just saying. He's totally breaking character. And then he notices that there's a pipe there that is clearly not natural, and anybody who stumbles upon that should know that's not natural.
Right. It doesn't require having he has a memory, right? Of
Right.
drawing a circle on a whiteboard.
I have no idea what that was about. I really
You didn't
don't.
need a memory of what a circle is in order
Ooh.
to realize this is a pipe.
Flashback to Janice. Wow, that is a pipe that water comes out of. Okay. That's what a lot of this episode is like. So he realizes that it's not natural, that it's a water intake valve.
Yeah. So he comes to the conclusion that someone's stealing water from this creek illegally. Because it's illegal to take water from a creek, apparently. I don't know. And he comes to the realization that somebody is taking the water. That means somebody is nearby.
And all he has to do is walk around a tree and, there's the cabin.
There's the cabin, which they're not even looking for the cabin at this point.
Right.
They were looking for the creek.
Right. I mean, that's the spatial orientation of this episode is not done very well, for sure. That's one of the many problems of this episode. Okay, so they find the cabin and they all just let themselves right in. Like, they don't bother knocking. Maybe somebody lives there. I mean, like, that's the point of a cabin. Somebody living off the grid, living in this cabin. There might be somebody actually in there, but they just walk straight in. And, okay, so when they walk in, it's daytime. The light is like you see the sun. The next time we are there, they act like they just got there because they're discovering food and water and yay, and it's suddenly dark outside.
Right.
So there's a continuity problem there.
There is. So the first day when they left, their goal was to make it to the cabin by nightfall and spend the night there. And Ben said that's not going to happen, and it didn't happen. They spent the night somewhere, where the wolves were. They spent the night there. They woke up in the morning. They had a 2-mile walk to go from where they spent the night to the cabin. 2 miles left. And suddenly it's nighttime. So it took them literally an entire day. In July, mind you. It doesn't get dark till 9 o'clock at night. It took them an entire, 12 hours to walk 2 miles.
Yeah, these kids suck, man. No wonder they died in the original timeline.
I mean, granted, Leah has this broken ankle. They could have carried her 2 miles in less than 12 hours.
Yeah, I would think so. Okay, to give you some perspective, I used to, when I was a kid, about the same age, by the way, I used to have to walk from my house to the place where I worked, IGA at the time, and that was about a mile walk. That took me, maybe a half hour to do.
Right.
So, this is 2 miles?
I mean, we used to walk a mile in gym class. It took...
Now we're talking like a bunch of old bogeys. Yeah, back in my day, we had to walk a mile.
It was 40 minutes gym class?
Yeah.
And that included changing, doing your warm-ups, getting out to the track. So I don't remember, but I think it was
it took about 40 minutes to walk it.
Yeah, if you were doing a walking day.
Which, by the way, that was supposed to be running a mile, but most of us didn't do that.
We walked. We all walked.
I mean, there were a few crazy kids that actually tried to run it, but...
I remember one day, actually, the gym teacher actually told me they wanted me to walk. They said, don't try running. I want to see how fast you can walk it.
Interesting.
I was like, cool, because I was going to walk anyway. So thanks for giving me permission.
All right, awesome. Leah ends up revealing in the scene that her uncle is a reporter for the TV news, which is convenient.
Mm-hmm. And she called him.
Oh, yes, that's the other thing.
That's important here.
This house is supposed to be off the grid, and yet there is a working phone.
There is a working phone. Yeah, it's hooked to. Well, it doesn't have to be hooked to electricity, but it's hooked to a phone line.
Right, which makes it not off the grid. Off the grid means you have no electricity, you have no phone line, no connection to the real world whatsoever.
Yeah, and so it's important here that we know she made a call to her uncle, because that's going to explain later how they reached the uncle, right?
Yeah.
Because they were able to do a callback. And I'll mention this now, since we're talking about the uncle. I was very disappointed when we met the uncle. We'll meet him later. At this point, when she's talking about her uncle, I was expecting it to be Roberto. You remember Roberto?
Yeah, I remember Roberto. I know what you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah. That's what I really thought we were going with this. I was convinced. That
would have been a nice callback for sure. All right, so the people from the school show up, and I'm surprised they didn't have guns and were armed to the teeth ready to shoot these kids the way they were acting throughout the episode, especially as we go on. Leah ends up sacrificing herself so that the other kids can get away. Ben ends up saying that they should go and help her. Roy thinks, well, what do we need to help her for? She sacrificed herself for us so that we could get away. And Ben ends up saying that they should storm the school and try to get her. And Roy is, of course, skeptical of this plan. I think it was his idea to call the uncle, right? Or was it Stacie's idea?
It was Stacie. She's the one who was she came up with the plan, yeah. And she was like, well, I know how we're going to do it. Leah's going to help us. And they're like, what do you mean?
So, all right, back at the school, the adults have Leah, and they act like she's a terrorist under arrest. I'm surprised we didn't see electric shocks or waterboarding.
Well, they said that she got a week in the box. So they're literally planning on taking this kid who has a broken ankle. She's dehydrated. She was in a car accident. And they're just going to stick her in this box for a week without any contact.
Where she's likely going to die. Like, let's be real here. If they did that, she was going to die. Probably of an infection from the broken ankle.
Yeah, there was no, like, even insinuation of medical treatment happening in the intermediary.
Like, are we not concerned about getting sued? Is there no liability problems with this?
I think that's why they were so concerned about finding the missing kids. Because if they get out there, right, they could be exposed.
Anyway, these are some pretty terrible adults. Yeah. Okay. So they try to take her to the box, but a van drives up to the exact right spot that he needs to be, to the boxes where they're taking this girl. And wouldn't you know it, it's a reporter. No, it's not Roberta. It's
Uncle George.
Uncle George. And
all the kids are with him. So he came to the cabin and picked up the kids.
Right, because this was probably like 5 minutes away from the cabin.
It was 5 miles.
So yeah, the day is saved. The school has been exposed that we knew nothing about. I mean, you could have made an entire series about this school in itself.
Yeah.
Based on what we saw at the last 5 minutes of this episode.
Right. They gave us very little. You know, like as far as actually showing us what's going on. We just got these little hints. And really, you can jump to the conclusion that they're just taking people's money. Right? They're charging these families to send their kids there because the parents don't want to deal with the kids. And they don't want to deal with the kids either. So instead of actually helping these troubled teens, they're just like, do what you're supposed to do or we're going to lock you in a hole.
And that could have made for a very good episode of television that we didn't get.
Right.
Back at the project, Janice is gone. She got away with all her crucial components.
Yeah, she had that time she needed because she had locked everybody down. And you know, it's funny that when they got out of the lockdown, it was Addison who came and let them out of the elevator. And I wrote down, like, all of these people in the project, right? We've seen there's, like, a ton of extras. They've got a lot of people working there. It takes Addison, who just spent all night with Ben, to come and let them out of the elevator.
I mean, that's pretty sad. Maybe they didn't want to let them out. I mean, it is the boss, so it's like, yay, the boss is locked up. We can
let's
party
leave
time.
him there a while. And, you know, also, I do want to make a point of that, too. We're talking about the continuity of this episode. Were they really locked for, like, 24 hours in this elevator? Because it doesn't feel like time was passing at the project at the same rate it was passing in the Leap.
Right, and ordinarily I wouldn't make issue of that, except for the fact that Addison was basically, you know, on the Leap the entire time. She wasn't part of the lockdown at all.
Right.
So she comes out at the end of the lockdown, as you said, to let Magic and Jen out. So it would seem that the time is happening concurrently.
Right. I mean, that's kind of how they present that this, you know, usually works. And it's been like a full 24 hours of the Leap.
Right.
Like we saw overnight sleep, then there was the whole hike, and then it got dark again. So actually it's been 2 days. Right?
Right, something like that. Yeah, so there's been at least a couple of days here.
Because it's morning now, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the daytime when the news van comes.
Right.
And it was nighttime when they were at the cabin. So it's been 2 full days, 48 hours. And were they sitting in the elevator for 48 hours?
Well, I'm glad
just
they didn't.
To have that one conversation about Jen's dad. Like I said, you know, it's kind of soapy. It really felt like that when you're looking at like, oh, we're still in this moment 2 days later.
I'm glad that they have better survival abilities than these kids have, apparently. Because they just didn't die in the elevator after 2 days. You know, really after talking about this episode, I kind of feel worse about it. Like, at the beginning, I was like, okay, this is okay. But after actually talking about it, it really is goofy. And
And it really kind of feels like this project scenes and this episode weren't made to go together.
Right.
And it feels like they inserted them here. And it doesn't feel like they fit, like time-wise. And it's just, I don't know, it's just kind of all over the place, right?
So are you basically thinking that they shot these project scenes with it intending to be in a different episode?
I think that's possible. Like that they knew they wanted this story at the project to be wherever they're leaving mid-season. And I feel like maybe it was kind of last minute that this is the leap they put it into. Now, we do get that, of course, that scene at the end, but that could have easily been something they kind of added. You know?
Right. They could have filmed that after the fact.
So, yeah, Addison gives Ben the whole, here's the happy ending. And again, it was really too easy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, everybody got a happy ending. Yay, all because you walked them through the woods.
Now, as you mentioned in the Stand By Me movie, based on the Stephen King short story, The Body, not all the kids got away, like, okay. Like, some of them actually died at the end. Like, we were told that they ended up dying.
Yeah.
So this is definitely, like, way too easy.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if we're comparing it to the movie Stand By Me.
Lily thinks so.
Yes, the dog agrees with me.
So Addison tells us the camp got shut down, and she made this joke about the director Sullivan was being arrested. She goes, "You want to guess who's gonna go into the box next?" Like, I thought that was funny. She's talking about him, going to prison. But she says everybody's happy. Stacie moved to Vegas and manages a casino, and she told us at the beginning that's where she wanted to go, was Vegas. Roy, he didn't end up in Alaska. He went to Boston. He's got 4 kids, and he runs a group home.
I mean, good for him. It's way warmer in Boston than it is in Alaska.
And I imagine his group home is better than this school. Right?
I'm sure. I would hope so. Just about anywhere would be better.
And Leah's a rocket scientist. Which seems important. I feel like that could be something involved in something, right? And Ben, the teenage Ben, becomes a sculptor, which, I don't know, that seemed kind of out of nowhere. And the big point is they stayed friends forever. They go on vacations together. They're this group of best friends.
Forever and ever and ever.
Forever and ever.
How touching.
Happy ending to the leap.
Yes. Yeah, a little too pat. The entire episode was way too pat.
Yeah. And they made a promise to all stay friends forever. And it was that mention of the word promise that prompted Ben to have a memory.
Oh, yes, that's right. The memory, which was the moment that we have for the fall finale that feels like the fall finale moment.
Right.
Where Ben realizes the reason that he's been doing all this leaping in the first place.
He had all these memories of conversation with Janice, which we had little sprinkles of throughout the episode. And suddenly it all came back to him. We don't know how many details he remembers yet, but what he tells us is, I know the reason that I leaped. And it's to save you, Addison.
That brings up a number of questions.
And then that's it. That's the end of the episode.
Ben ends up
We don't
leaping.
get a leap out. Like, we don't get a leap into the next scenario.
Right. We don't see what's going on next because the creators have no idea where Ben is going. Yeah, so that brings up a number of questions. Well, I'm sure that's Ben's motivation for why he started leaping. But is that the reason that Janice started this in the first place? Is she lying to Ben, perhaps?
Right. So we saw within these memories, we saw Janice say to Ben, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And we saw him say, "It's the only way." And the word promise came up. Ben said to Janice, "Promise me that you'll follow it through." We don't know what that means.
Right.
But Ben was counting on Janice to do something after this moment.
Right.
And we know that Janice is trying to warn Ben of something. She hasn't gone to the team to tell them. So it can't be something as simple as I need to pass a message on them to give it to Ben.
Right.
I don't know. Is she trying to warn them about something involving the project?
Yeah. Okay, so this obviously happens in the future.
Right.
They're trying to get to the future, is what we've been told.
Yeah.
Or that's at least Ian's latest speculation. So obviously something bad is going to happen to Addison, or that's what Ben thinks at least.
Right.
So somehow Janice and Ben have to be getting future knowledge.
Right. They got information from the future.
Somehow.
Maybe it's something to do with Martinez.
Perhaps. Who, by the way, last week he was credited without appearing in the episode. This week he was not credited. The actor. So, I don't know what's going on there exactly, but that's interesting. So it might have it has to have something to do with Martinez. Otherwise, what's the point of including him in the story?
Right.
We just don't know exactly how. Is he the one with the future knowledge that's giving it to Ben and Janice here? Or is it somebody else?
Right. Somebody was visited by a leaper or something.
Mm-hmm.
Or Ziggy. Did Ziggy get some knowledge? I don't know. I mean, I'm sure we'll find out.
Yes.
Assuming this, they actually tell the story and the episodes were given. And I know that's was their plan, is they said no matter what, they want to finish like this main season 1 arc, which now we know is about saving Addison.
Or at least it is from Ben's perspective. Whether it actually is or not is another matter.
So I had this kind of theory ever since we started talking about, it's a point in the future that, maybe it's not about Sam, which is what everyone was hoping.
I don't know. Like, early on, it seemed like they were, like, leaning in that direction. And I think they ended up changing directions once they realized they were not going to get Scott Bakula.
It's possible. It's possible that they were kind of keeping it open. But now it feels like they've kind of committed at this point that this isn't really about Sam, right? This particular arc isn't about Sam. It's about Addison. And remember, what's supposed to happen is couple of years from now, they weren't ready yet, Addison was supposed to leap.
Right.
And Ben was going to be her hologram. So I'm thinking that whatever they're trying to save Addison from has something to do with her leaping. And Ben now leapt instead to try and circumvent whatever happened to her.
So is Ben trying to get to the future to stop Addison from leaping in the future?
I don't know. But I feel like it's got something to do with the fact that she was going to leap, right? I feel like that's important to this dynamic, is that in the future, she was going to leap and something bad was going to happen.
Interesting.
Or even as far as something was going to happen to her during a leap. And now he's taking all of her leaps instead of her.
Any other thoughts in that direction?
I'm not sure.
No?
No. I mean, we've got a couple months to stew over it before we get back to the story.
Yes, a couple of months of wait.
Before we talk about the trailer.
We had a trailer?
We did.
I didn't even watch it.
Okay.
I didn't even think there was a trailer.
So I actually wrote no leap out or trailer because I thought we weren't getting a trailer. And then I left the TV on. Now you're watching on Peacock, so you're not getting the trailers anyways.
The only way that I would know about it is if I went to YouTube and searched it up.
Yeah, so I didn't think there was a trailer. And then it was like a lot of commercials, and then we got a trailer. So we'll talk about that in a second. Before we leave this leap, though, I did my whole analyzing of trying to see if there's any character connections, which I always do. We did have a lot of last names here, so I had a lot of names to look up. I found links to the names Winters and Thompson.
Okay.
Okay, so Ben Winters. We did have 2 characters named Winters in the original series. And they were from the episode Memphis Melody.
Okay.
The woman who Sam/Elvis helps is Sue Ann Winters.
Right, I remember her first name. I didn't remember her last name.
And her sister is Julie Winters that works with her at the diner. Now, that's 1954.
They could be relatives.
I don't see there being any real, reason to think they're linked to Ben Winters.
Right, right.
The other name I found in common was Thompson, and that's Stacie Thompson.
Mm-hmm.
Thompson is the name of the fiance in Kamikaze Kid.
Okay, that would be the Ben's sister? I don't know, Sam's sister?
Cam's sister's fiance, the abusive one.
Okay.
That she breaks up with.
Oh, okay. His name is Thompson.
Ben Thompson. Bob Thompson was his name. And again, there's no reason to think these are linked, but in my head, I like that one. I totally think Stacie could be his daughter. Now, she's black, but she's light enough that one of her parents could be white.
Okay.
Okay. And they describe her father. The main reason I like this idea, and of course, you know, this is just me being silly. There's nothing even to remotely think that this could be canon. But what we know is her mom died in a car accident. Her dad's alcoholic, probably abusive.
Oh,
It sounds like it could be him,
oh,
right?
absolutely, absolutely. Now that I think about it, I like it a lot. Because, not Cam, the fiance in that episode, Bob, was an abusive drunk butthead, basically.
Yeah. I can totally see him raising a child who ends up in a place like this.
I can see that. That makes sense.
Being alcoholic and abusive.
Mm-hmm.
She tried setting her house on fire. Well, if that was your father.
I mean, I think I would do the same.
Yeah. So I like that. I like that as being, you know, a possible. It's a possible. Right. I don't think it is, but, you know.
I don't think we're ever going to get confirmation on that, so we're free to think that if you'd like.
Yeah. And, you know, age-wise, it could work. He might be a little too old to be who you'd expect to be this character's father. But
let's see, what year was that? That was
61.
And he was about 20?
Yeah. But see, here's the thing. Men can have children very late in life, so that's not a problem. Right. But yeah, that's all. I didn't find any actual connections, but that was the closest I found. But I like that one. I'm sticking that in my archive of thoughts to have about links if they ever do choose to link all of these episodes to original stories.
Okay.
Just like, you know, I'm sticking with Ian being related to Buddy Wright.
That makes sense.
I'm sticking with that until we're told otherwise.
Yes, until we meet Ian's actual parents, which, you know, the way they're going, they're probably going to do sooner or later.
Okay, so you haven't watched the trailer.
I did not watch it at all. I didn't even know it existed, honestly.
All right. We're going to pause recording so you can watch the trailer, and then we'll talk about it. So we'll be right back.
Okay. Okay, so I just watched a trailer. That was interesting. It was definitely not a single episode that they were...
No, so this was like a to come in the rest of this season, right?
We saw him be a bodyguard and
a bodyguard
doctor
for Elton John. I believe that they mentioned Elton John. I think that was when they were saying he was a bodyguard.
That's interesting because Sam, in one of the last episodes of the original series, leaked into Marilyn Monroe's bodyguard. Yes,
absolutely. That's definitely a kind of a link there. And we got the date, Chicago, 1979. I, again, don't know if that was part of the Elton John or just another moment they threw in the trailer. We did confirm. They're saying it's coming back January 2nd. So confirmation that is the date. We knew we had to wait till January. Good news is we don't have to wait long into January. January 2nd is a lot sooner than January 20-something.
Right, definitely.
And Ian tells us that they think that the end point that we've been trying to reach is the date Addison's supposed to die. Which, I don't know. It seems like there's a lot that could go into that, right? But it's definitely leading into the whole, you've got to come back because we've got a lot of story left to tell.
Right. And
we do know that there's another 10 episodes to go before, you know, any decision about season 2 comes into play. So we're guaranteed 10 more episodes.
Right,
regardless.
This is episode 8. For some reason, I was thinking this was episode 9, but it's not. It's episode 8.
That's what I was saying. Like, I'm surprised they didn't do 9 and 9, but they didn't. Right. They did 8 and 10. So we've got 10 episodes in the back half to come back to. And it looked like, there was a lot of exciting moments. We've got the Elton John thing. We saw him delivering a baby. We saw him being a doctor. There was talk about somebody getting murdered. So they've got a lot of exciting stuff for us planned. I'm guessing some of those episodes aren't even fully planned yet. You know, the last 10, since we did get that extra episode order. Right. I'm sure there's still some production going on, pre-production, and those. It's
funny, we haven't seen any of the episodes yet that we got teased. Like the Joe Montana episode, the punk rocker episode.
That was my question, too, is were those original teaser trailers that we saw actual episodes that they're doing, or was it literally just promotional? And I think I mentioned this before. Timeless, which was also NBC, that's what they did.
Really?
So in Timeless, you know, we visited all different points in history. another time travel show. Check it out if you haven't. It was awesome. They did these teasers for that series where they went to the Titanic and all of these places that never happened in the show, but it was all in promotional footage. So I'm kind of wondering if that's what they did here. If so, I don't like it. I don't want you to show us this character doing something that we never get to see within the canon.
Right. They never actually ended up visiting the Titanic, but they teased it? Well, that sounds really disappointing.
Like pre-release of the series is something they showed in the promotional stuff. But yeah, we saw in the teasers before, the pilot even aired, we saw, for example, Ben being in the military and jumping out of an airplane with parachute.
Right.
Is that going to happen?
Who knows?
Because I feel like they would have showed us that again.
Right. Like, in the new trailer.
Right, in the new trailer that's showing us, like, here's stuff that's to come. And the fact that that's not there yet makes me think they didn't film that.
Yeah, and there was the punk rocker, which I mentioned. Female punk rocker. And then there was also Joe Montana. And they actually talked about, like, that episode a little bit. I think I remember reading something about it, how they went about de-aging Joe Montana. I think they actually got him in for a cameo. That's a lot of effort if they're going to just use it for promo material and not an actual episode. Yeah,
so I'm confused. Unless they're saving episodes that they've already filmed for the back half.
Probably.
But I don't know. The way they, like, rearranged episodes already and what they're giving us in this trailer, I feel like they still have a lot to film, for the back half. So
I mean, that's probably why they're taking this long break in the first place, is because they want to film
this break
these episodes.
is longer than a lot of TV shows breaks. Like, a lot of shows don't take their break until after Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. And we're stopping now here. We're still 2 weeks from Thanksgiving. It feels like this is a longer break than we're used to seeing in series. I mean, This Is Us would usually have a Thanksgiving episode, and then we'd get a Christmas episode.
Right.
And, there would only be, like, these shorter 2 to 3 week breaks.
Right.
And we're taking, like, a full 2 months here.
Right. And I'm sure a lot of that has to do with the back order of episodes, the additional 8 episodes that they were not counting on, or was it 6? No, it was 6 episodes.
6 episodes to bring us from 12 to 18.
So they have to do some rearranging of the story to get it.
Because, they wanted to tell the same end story regardless, which I'm really glad that they did it that way. They weren't going to just leave us hanging. So we're getting more filler is what we're getting, as opposed to a different ending to the season. They're telling us the same ending they were going to with 12 or with 18. Oh yeah, also I wrote down there was a scene where it looked like Ben had been shot or stabbed or something. He had a bloody chest.
Yeah, that's all right. He'll recover from that in like 2 settings.
So they definitely were trying to show us there's a lot of excitement to come in the back half. Definitely they want people to come back. Ratings. Okay, we know ratings have been on a slow decline. Definitely not as bad as some people would like us to think.
The last article that I read was that the ratings had actually stabilized.
Yeah. I mean, it's so hard to say because everybody reads statistics differently, right? And ratings is such a stupid concept anyways, that, I don't know. It's hard to you can kind of interpret them however you want, right? To say whatever you want to say about them. But I know one thing that is a concern is, are people going to come back after an 8-week break?
Well, I certainly hope so.
I certainly hope so. Now, one thing that NBC is doing is they're going to show all the episodes again, according to Fate's Wide Wheel. They told us that last week. Mm-hmm.
I've actually seen that somewhere else, too.
Okay,
in a couple
great.
Of different spots.
So I haven't seen, like, TV listings, but presumably every Monday night in its time slot at 10 p.m., we're going to get a rerun of all 8 episodes for the next 8 weeks, which I think is a great opportunity. I would suggest everyone who's enjoying this show, tune in, watch the episodes again, give it some ratings, to get rerun ratings would be a great indicator to NBC that, we're here, we're interested as an audience, and we want more of this series. And, even if you're not totally in love with it, I mean, we had a lot of problems with this episode, right? We sat here and we nitpicked it over the last hour, and we came to the conclusion that it's problematic. There's some problems. But at the same time, I'm really enjoying this series.
Well, yeah, okay.
I don't want anybody to be like, oh, they're not perfect, let's cancel them.
No show is perfect.
Right.
And every series has its episodes that are great.
Right.
All in all, I thought this season that we've had to this point, these 8 episodes, they're way better than I was expecting.
Yeah, I think they're doing a really good job with, trying to please the audience that's fans of the original series, trying to make it something fresh and new that people who didn't watch the original series can sit and enjoy and become fans of. And, they could have just given us a straight up reboot.
Right.
And it could have been terrible.
Right.
And I think they're doing a pretty good job overall.
Yeah,
And I definitely want to give them a chance to tell the story. Tell whatever story you're trying to tell.
Mm-hmm.
Give these creators as much time as they want to continue the story. Do not cancel this.
Right, absolutely.
Keep it going. Because as fans of this series, of this universe, we've waited 30 years. And guess what? Our goal as a fandom is to get Sam home, right?
Right, absolutely.
And as it stands right now, that's not on the table. But it's definitely not going to be on the table if this series gets canceled. If this series gets canceled, we're never visiting Quantum Leap lore again.
Yeah, as of now, Scott Bakula is not part of the series, but that doesn't mean that he couldn't at some point decide to make a guest starring appearance where he could come home.
Absolutely.
Which can't happen if there's no second season.
Right. So we need the show to continue on because you love Quantum Leap. You don't have to love every episode. You don't even have to really love this series, but support it if you're a fan of Quantum Leap in general. Support this show. Don't talk crap about it online and say that it's terrible. You don't have to love every aspect. You don't, because that's not what television is, right? But if you respect the overall story of Quantum Leap, help support the cause, save Quantum Leap, renew Quantum Leap, let's get this going, keep talking about the show in positive ways, encourage your friends and family and people you meet on the street to check it out.
Now, to be fair, I did see some positive articles in the Facebook groups that people have posted.
There is positivity as well. But I'm just talking to the naysayers. If you don't like something, you don't have to watch it.
Right.
Don't try and discourage other people from watching it. That's just silly.
It seems like there is a small contingent of people who are just in these groups just to be like neg people out and to like, haha, you're enjoying this, you're stupid, basically, is the overall tone of some of these people. I
mean, and that happens in every fandom. You get these trolls who come and just, poop all over whatever it is you're fanning about. I think my best example is the Walking Dead fan community. I can go on Twitter, and it's an amazing community full of positive people. You go on Facebook, you go on any Facebook post that's anything about The Walking Dead, and 90% of the comments are people saying, how is this still on? This is trash. It's horrible. It's the worst thing that's ever been made. It's still, even though, we're at the final 2 episodes left of the series before it ends, it's still one of the highest rated shows on television. Yet you'll see 90% of the people on Facebook talking about it are trashing it.
It's interesting, though. Why would you join a group just to trash something?
Who has... See, we take the time to talk about this show because we love it and we want to talk about Quantum Leap.
And I should say that, yes, occasionally I am critical of things, but that's out of love.
Right.
I want, the best for the show.
We're talking about this, to analyze it and to really do a deep dive and talk about every aspect there is to talk about. But we're not going to take our time to talk about something that we hate all at all.
Right.
Like, that's just silly. Some people have nothing better to do with their time than go and complain about things, and in this case, there are people who are complaining about this show. They're complaining about, certain actors or characters on this show that they have personal problems with. Your negativity is not needed, though.
That goes back to the whole woke argument.
Yeah.
That we talked about this a few times. I specifically mentioned in the podcast, like, people have a problem with the character of Ian.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, okay, so this person is a non-binary character, and we don't really touch upon that very much.
No.
Ian just is sort of there and exists.
Yeah.
There's been like one line that references, Ian's identity at all. And so the people's problem who are, in this woke crowd are basically complaining that Ian exists.
Yeah.
Not realizing, well, I'm sure they do realize, but yeah, these people exist in real life too.
Right.
So, yeah, so that goes back to the whole negativity thing and the anti-wokeness, which, how often has this show even gotten remotely political?
It hasn't.
Like,
I think this show's done a great job of representing, all of these characters without, pushing any agenda.
Mm-hmm. But like it or not, like, people like Ian do exist. And so occasionally they're going to be reflected in our art.
Yeah.
Does that make it woke?
And you know what? If you, this doesn't go to anybody who's listening to this, because if somebody's listening to us, they're fans and they are here for this, right?
Yeah.
But to those people who are going out of their way to make negative comments online, if you don't want to watch the show for whatever reason, now I think your reasons are stupid, but if that's your reason that you don't like this character, and that goes for any character, if you don't like a character or an actor, you have the freedom to not watch the media that they're in.
Right.
You can choose to just not watch it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't understand why some people take it so personal that other people enjoy something that they don't enjoy.
Yeah, I can't say I understand that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's ridiculous to me. Now, I spend a lot of time watching television. I spend a lot of time online talking about television. My whole Twitter is about talking about television shows.
And you now have a podcast which is running like an hour or so more talking about another television show.
And again, I do it because I enjoy these things and I enjoy participating in discussions about these things. And I don't know. I just don't understand the motivations of people who take time out of their lives to be mean and discouraging to other people. It's just ridiculous. But it means those of us who really, care about these works of fiction and want to see them continue have to work twice as hard to, spread positivity, to encourage other people to check something out. If you enjoy something and think that other people would like it, let them know. You have to go out of your way to overcome the negativity. And again, we're taking 8 weeks off. It's going to be really important for everyone to come back when the show comes back and really give a push to the ratings. Yeah, Lily will be here. She can't wait, right, Lil? So as far as we go, we're not going to be back for a while talking about this series because it's going to be a while till we have a new episode. But when the new episodes air, we will be continuing to talk about them each week. Corman Productions will be posting other content.
Yes, I will be talking about the old episodes of the original series, starting with Misty South, and then I think the next one after that is Black on Black Fire, which is a
Black and White on Fire.
Right, I have to actually check the episode title. That one's...
Yeah, I just watched that one recently, so.
So yeah, I'll be doing some Quantum Leap episodes. I'll also be doing some other content as well. So there's plenty to still look forward to from my channel. I'll definitely miss talking about this show during that time because I really enjoyed doing so. And like I said, I this episode wasn't very great, but I did enjoy, kind of ripping in a new one in places, making fun of it a little bit. That's part of the joy of, talking about these series, is the occasional shows that aren't particularly great, making fun of them. But yeah, I will still be plenty active. Stacie, do you have any other additional thoughts on this episode?
No, I think we covered everything, and I can't wait till January so that we can dive into the back half of this season.
All right, so we would like to hear from you. Stacie can be reached at...
I can be reached on Twitter at TV and Coupon Talk.
And If you like this video and want to support the channel, you can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can buy something from the Core Production store on Zazzle. You can buy me a coffee, which is a new way to support content creators such as myself. And you can follow and subscribe to my podcast. On my YouTube channel, you can share, like, and comment, as well as subscribing to my channel. This is Dave and Stacie from Core Productions signing off, and Lily too, of course.